I have my stitches with me today. Um, because I'm going to be talking about Stitch, as you probably deduced from the thumbnail and the title of the video. So, um, uh, I'll explain how I came to the inspiration for this video a little bit later in the video. Um, but, and on the surface, you would not necessarily think that there would be a huge amount of crossover in regards to similarities between experiment number 626 slash Stitch from Lilo and Stitch franchise, all the movies and the series, and Charlotte Linlin Big Mom Yonko, former Yonko at this point in time, from One Piece. And generally, given the depictions of the two characters, you would be right. There wouldn't be a huge amount of comparisons to make generally on the surface unless you're a little bit more familiar with both characters. And you kind of, like me, and you kind of start thinking about things. I actually found more similarities between these characters than I initially thought I would find once I started thinking about it. And that kind of scared me, but also intrigued me. And last night while I was working, I was texting with one of my coworkers, and I was telling him, well, I'm going to do a video tomorrow where I compare these two characters. And I sent him like a picture of like Stitch looking all adorable and cute, and then Big Mom with like the flaming sword and the flaming hair on top of the cloud and everything. And I'm like, he didn't really say anything after that. And then I'm like, I'm surprised you didn't ask what those two could remotely have in common with each other. And he's like, for reference, he's older than me. Like, he has kids that are my age. He's probably not too far off from my parents' age. And he's not exceedingly familiar with anime, but like, as I said, his kids are my age, so he's at least aware of like Lilo and Stitch and stuff. And he's like, although I wouldn't know for the anime, I know that if they have something in common, you would be the one of the few that could analyze and explain it. And my answer, I will accept your compliment. And I was just like, in general, admittedly off the bat, I was like, well, a lot of this stemmed from just like one image, and I'll get to that image when I get to it, but I was just like, there's actually a lot of comparisons here between the two of them. So let's compare Stitch to Big Mom, to Charlotte Linlin. And you can argue with me on these in the comments if you want. Once I've gone through them, you can point out other similarities or other things where they differ, because there's other huge things where they differ. Obviously, they differ a lot in size, and the fact that, Stitch isn't exceedingly that big, and Big Mom is gigantic. She's not a giant, but she's gigantic. And so kind of some of the things that first hit me off the bat were both of them end up abandoned on an island. So at the beginning of Lilo and Stitch, Stitch gets dropped onto, after he escapes from the Galactic Federation or whatever, he, lands on Earth in Hawaii. Admittedly, there are far worse islands you could have been dropped off on. You could have been lost on. And it's at least a civilized area, Hawaii, so it's not like you're just living in the random jungle somewhere and you have no idea where you are. And of course, Big Mom, when she's a child, she gets left on Elbath by her parents. And, say what you want about her parents, she probably was causing a fair amount of problems in the kingdom she was from. We never find out what kingdom that is. Maybe someday we will, but probably not. But, she ends up, they're putting her on an island where she'll at least be probably more comfortable in size in regards to being around the giants and everything. Whether or not they know about the sheep's house or the lamb's house is a little bit left up for debate. And they both end up at a place for lost things, as in Linlin, of course, ends up at the sheep's house, with Mother Caramel and all the other orphans and everything. And she's welcomed in there. And Stitch ends up at the pound on I can never remember what island they're on. I think it's like Kauai or something. I don't remember exactly. But Stitch ends up at the pound. And, oh god, I hit rainy flashbacks. Ends up at the pound where he is, of course, found by Lilo. And, in those comparisons of things, Linlin is very much welcomed in by Mother Carmel and such. And what ends up happening is, kind of other things is, they both end up making friends with a local girl that lives on the island. In regards to Stitch, it's of course Lilo. And although it's a little bit more, he's using her as technically like a human shield a little bit to keep Jumba and Plakely from attacking him, and such. And, with Linlin, she makes friends with Girth along with the other kids that live at the orphanage. And such. So we get those comparisons there, and they kind of start, teaching them about like living on the island and the island culture and everything like that. So, Girth explains to Linlin about like, the solstice and Semla and everything like that. And, Lilo starts to, kind of tell Stitch about living on the island, showing him around the island and everything like that. Also, they both love sweets. Linlin, of course, wedding cake. Not much more explanation is needed there. And Stitch, when they're at the restaurant where Nami works, wrong. Yeah. No, it's when they're at the restaurant where Lilo's sister works, or Nani works, they end up, of course, Stitch, gets cake. Also, later on in the movie, he just bakes a giant cake for Lilo's birthday, which I'm just like, I don't know how you baked that, but okay. So there's that fun stuff there. I'm going to jump around a little bit with some of the comparisons. Some of it is, of course, they both end up getting into a altercation at some point with one of the local authority figures. With Stitch, it's, of course, he gets into an altercation with Cobra. Not Vivi's father, Cobra, Agent Cobra Bubbles, ends up getting into an altercation with him. And then, of course, with Linlin, she, of course, gets into the altercation with, I can't remember if it's Lord Fallbeard or Lord Mountbeard, one of the two. She gets into a conflict with them, of course, when she's having her Semla hunger pains and such. And she ends up, of course, breaking a sword and killing him and everything like that. And they both have someone that protects them. With Linlin, it's Mother Carmel, stops the other giant from trying to kill Linlin. Admittedly, Mother Carmel is doing this for her own benefit, and the fact of like, oh, this Linlin just proved how strong she is, and I can use that for my own benefit. And for Stitch, he has Lilo, who is trying to protect him from getting sent back to the pound by Nani, with the whole, Ohana means family, family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. And so we see that, and Lilo is doing it out of the goodness of her own heart, because she is actually just like literally a good person. Mother Carmel is doing it for selfish reasons, but there's still a comparison to be made there. They both can cause huge amounts of destruction. We see that with Big Mom and what she causes for, going after her Semla pains. We see that later on when she's older, and, all grown up and on, Totland, where she, has her hunger pangs for the, Croquembouche and everything like that. And for Stitch, Jumba states that, like, Stitch's, his destructive programming is taking effect. He will be irresistibly drawn to large cities, where he will back up sewers, reverse street signs, and steal everyone's left shoe. Why specifically the left shoe was never explained, but, it's funny in general, so that's fine. Also, there's the other thing of Jumba's, other explanation of Stitch is, monstrosity. What you see before you is the first of a new species. I call it experiment number 626. He is bulletproof, fireproof, and can think faster than a supercomputer. He can see in the dark, can lift objects 3,000 times his size. His only instinct? To destroy everything he touches. And this is where we get a little bit into the differences. Also, it's stated Stitch is like indestructible and stuff like that. Big Mom is compared to a giant lead balloon and everything like that, with, all the attacks she's able to just tank and everything like that, which as strong as she is. In general, before she even gets like her hockey into account and everything like that, in regards to, Beijing's plan with everything that we see there, and how much it takes to even damage her with Law and Kid fighting together and all of that during Wano. And so we get a lot of those things. And, with Stitch, this is where we kind of start getting the differences. Stitch starts off as something that is supposed to be used for destruction and chaos and that type of a thing. And stealing shoes. Left shoes, specifically. Still don't know why. Never stated. And, like, he is designed by Jumba to cause all of these problems and cause chaos. Whereas, yes, Linlin was causing chaos in her childhood, and the fact that she was trying to, that she, always got so hungry and everything, and she never really had anything that helped her get her cravings under control. She tried to stick with the tradition of trying to wait, stay through the solstice and, through the hunger fasting and everything. And she did try. No one denies that she tried. It's just, unfortunately, the Semlaws and the hunger pangs got the better of her. And then that caused all the destruction. And then, even when we see her interactions with the other kids, yes, she is trying to rip off the, the fishman's gills, or trying to fix the, the extra limbs instead of the long arm one. Once Mother Carmel explains to her that, no, they're not broken or wrong. Those are just, they're different races and that type of a thing. And Linlin takes that to the nth degree in the way that she wants to use Mother Carmel's dream. We know as an audience later on that it's complete and utter, bullcrap. From, Mother Carmel's point of view, she's just a mountain witch that actually sells children to the world government. Yeah, that doesn't help much by any standard. But, Linlin still ends up, she wants to try to make the world better. And we see that. And so, Stitch starts off as what is supposed to be this kind of representation of like bad and chaos and everything like that. Although you do have sympathy for him at the beginning of the movie, and once you get a little bit more introduced to him and everything. And then with Linlin, she is 6 years old. She is a child, and she is exceedingly impressionable as a child. Also, both Stitch and Linlin seem to act like sponges for what they are shown, for the things that are around them. And the fact that, Linlin acts as a sponge for like wanting to learn what she can about the giants, and then wanting to learn what she can from Mother Carmel. And then once Mother Carmel and the other children are gone, your interpretation of that, once they're gone, and Streisand shows up, Streisand becomes this new influence on her, and he's the one that kind of turns her into, what she ends up becoming, and kind of, pushes her down the line and encourages her. And, that's when she, ends up turning into Big Mom later on and everything, and having this, huge bounty even as a child, and then, just all the way up to being a Yonko. And how, yes, still at the core of what she wanted to build with Totland was still this, this place where everyone can be accepted regardless of their own race. Regardless of whatever race they are, she wanted to build this good place. And, yes, she could have gone about it in better ways in regards to, like, that type of thing, in regards to, like, the leave or life type of deal that ends up getting brought up, of course. But she is still very much, she does offer them protection. And as I stated in previous videos, if I had to choose between living on like Wano under Kaido and living in Totland under Big Mom, I would choose living in Totland, because at the very least, I'm not going to go hungry. I'm certainly still going to have a place to live most of the time, because at least the, the different, the ministers and the, the Charlotte children seem to at least care for the people that live on the islands. And Linlin, to a degree, does care about her, citizens and everything like that. in regards to what they represent. But, you know, and as long as you don't make her or her children mad, you're probably going to be fine. Particularly if you're very good at cooking some type of thing, you're probably going to be fine with all of them. You know, the day-to-day citizens and stuff like that. Yes, as long as you're, you know, if you live in like Sweet City or some of the places where she shows up a lot and has her hunger pangs, you might be a little bit, you know, a little bit more of an issue. But like, you know, if you live further away from where she is, specifically in Thailand, then you're probably a bit better, even with the lever life and, you know, that type of a thing. And, you know, so we see how she turns into that. Whereas Stitch, you know, he starts off as what's supposed to be this, you know, all of this chaotic stuff. And then by the end of the movie, he has proven that he is good. He saves Lilo. He even saves Gantu, even though Gantu was the one that captured Lilo. And all of that other stuff. And then throughout the course of the rest of the series, where we see in the additional movies, and then into the, you know, the different the animated series that they did, even going into the 2 subsequent series where he ends up with another little girl who is not Lilo and whatever. And the cousins come back. And of course he has all of the cousins and everything that he built, you know, that he finds out that he has, that, you know, because he's experiment number 626. So there are 625 other experiments out there. And there ends up being another one, at least one other one after him. Actually, I think it's like 2 more after him, if I remember correctly. That Jumba and then Hamsterville make. And, you know, so we see a lot of that throughout the course of the series. We see how he is welcomed in by Lilo and how he takes in the way that she thinks. He's very perplexed by the way that she explains family in regards to Ohana. But then by the end of the movie, you know, it's, you know, this is my family. I found it all on my own. It's little and broken, but still good. Yeah, still good. And as I stated before, I have a huge amount of connection to Lilo and Stitch in regards to how it helped me in regards to my parents' divorce and that type of a thing. And all of that type of a thing. And, you know, with Stitch and Lilo, it's, you know, you see this as they build this family. Yes, they have Nani and they have David, but then there's also Jumba and Flakeley, and, you know, Cobra Bubbles is part of it, and even, you know, all of the cousins. And then even by the end of, like, you know, the movie of Leroy and Stitch, which kind of ends out Lilo and Stitch's kind of adventure to a degree, you know, Myrtle, who has been this, you know, annoying force of just causing problems for Lilo and Stitch throughout the entire series, you know, is part of the family. Same thing with, like, all of the other cousins that they've awakened at that point in time and such. And even, you know, having Gantu is kind of like, you know, an extended thing in the fact that he kind of has like a turnaround by the end of that part of the movie. That kind of gets reversed later on down the line, so I don't know what they were thinking. So, well, we got to keep the same formula going, but you get the idea. And so you see how those two differ and how they kind of flip. And, you know, they both have a friend that uses fire. You know, I can point that out too. You know, David is, you know, he's the fire dancer and stuff like that. And then, of course, Big Mom has Prometheus. So there's that. They both also have, like, a friend that is electric based in the fact that, you know, Linlin has, well, she had Zeus, but now she has Hera. And then she also had, and then Stitch has Experiment. Oh, I don't remember what it was, but he's like Sparky is like the yellow one. That's like one of the cousins. They also both really like music, and the fact that we know that Linlin has named a lot of her, you know, several of her children after different types of music in regards to like opera and things like that. Opera being specifically the name of one of her sons. He doesn't have a fun ending. Also, would not want Opera's devil fruit. I do not want to be whipped cream. I don't like whipped cream. No. No. There's far better devil fruits that I would prefer to have. But Stitch also loves music, and the fact that he is introduced to music through Lilo in regards to, you know, Elvis. And, you know, he just, you know, and, you know, because Lilo loves Elvis, and we see that as like this huge influence on him and on, you know, on Stitch and on Lilo and all of that. So we see those, you know, and, you know, those comparisons there. Stitch is also exceedingly smart in regards to the fact of, yes, he can think faster than a supercomputer. Linlin is actually also very, very cunning in regards to, you know, she built Totland. She became an emperor. Yeah, parts of that were like Stroisin kind of putting her on that path, but then she built that herself. Probably coming up with the plan to try to get all the cloning tech from the Germa and everything like that with the wedding was probably her idea to begin with. Yes, her children, you know, were part of it and everything like that with like Perospero and all of that, but you know, she's the one that came up with that. She's the one that ended up, you know, making the deal with Kaido when she ended up on Wano and being like, hey, you know, if we work together instead of against each other, we can take down, you know, pretty much any force that comes our way. So why don't we do that? And then we'll go find the One Piece. And then once we find the One Piece, then we can go back to trying to kill each other. You know, that concept. And, you know, that just seems like the way that would end up going. But it's still this exceedingly amount of cunning, even though you might want to point out that, oh, no, she's kind of stupid at times. I'm like, I'm not going to tell Big Mom that she's stupid. Why the hell would I do that? As I said, they both act as sponges for the influences around them in regard to, of course, Lilo and then, you know, Mother Carmel and Stroisin for them. Stitch learns the meaning of family, of Ohana, of the fact that Ohana and family don't always have to be just blood-related people, that they can be extended family, that they can be very much kind of like what the Straw Hats have, and the fact that, you know, yes, they have like Nakama, but also Ohana would also work very well for like what the Straw Hats are a representation of. And Stitch has that with Lilo and Nani and David and Jumba and Fleekly and Cobra and the cousins and everything like that. Linlin learns what she thinks is the meaning of family. And yes, I would say that she does love her children, but she also uses them as pawns. And, you know, in regards to, you know, I use you to help expand my crew and make me even stronger. And as long as you remain useful to me, I will allow you to stay around, type of a thing. You know, I will, you know, not end you. Yeah. And such, as long as you continue to be useful to me. And we kind of see her disregard pudding, you know, in Wano, you know, she's disregarded pudding in the fact that, you know, she's like, oh, just get, you know, she tells Kata, oh, just get, you know, just get Nico Robin. It's fine. I'm not interested in letting my daughter awaken her third eye. It's taking too long. We'll just capture Nico Robin and she can read the poneglyphs to us. So there's that. And then on top of that, there's also the way that she ends up treating, the way that her children interpret how they interact with their own fathers. In regards to the fact that, you know, when Cracker and Oven later on, of course, saw, and, you know, and Brule all saw Pound, yeah, they're like, yeah, former stepfather Pound or just Pound or whatever at this point in time. It doesn't matter. You're not a member of our family anymore. For the children, they're raised to be that their mother and their siblings are their family. What their fathers are, for the most part, are just irrelevant to a degree because they're just there to, you know, make Big Mom's family even bigger in regards to showing that she has children from all of these different races that are hybrids of all of these different races, barring, you know, very specific exceptions in regards to giants and Lunarians and technically, like, you know, the sky races for the Skypeans and stuff. But how she's able to, you know, see all of that. And, you know, how, you know, the siblings and, you know, in her family are very much, you know, some of them hold that view, some of them don't. You know, we see later on that Lola and Chiffon are like, you know, when they meet Pound, you know, once they're, you know, confirmed about who he is, they're like, oh, he is our dad. And then, like, they're happy to have him there. Whereas, like, the rest of them don't really seem to care. And as I said, we don't really know what type of a relationship a lot of them have with their own fathers. I know there was the whole theory that, like, Kaido was, like, Katakuri Oven and Daifuku's father, and that was basically disproved in the fact that, you know, you know, Kaido would have been kind of too young at that point in time, when they were on Rox's crew and that type of a thing. although, like, Rox being their father is still, I guess, an applicable concept, but, or one of the other members of the crew. But even with that, it's not like they have any real frame of reference for the most part of, like, how they interact with their own fathers. Yeah, the older ones remember the fathers of, like, the younger ones, because, Linlin would have been married to them for, 9 months to a year, depending on stuff. But other than that, they don't care. Whereas with Stitch and Lilo, it's just like they have all of the cousins and they work trying to find their best place, the perfect place, the place where they belong for each of the cousins. So that way they can all be happy and they make all the cousins good. Also, a lot of them do intend to involve food at various points in times, because I think it's experiment number 625, who is Reuben, is exceedingly, he has all the same powers as Stitch, but he's a coward, and he just makes sandwiches all day long. And they're apparently very, very good sandwiches, so he would probably get along quite well with Linlin in that regard. He'd get along fine in that regard. Also, they both have these very large, eclectic families in regard to the cousins and the children, so that's another comparison. As I said, Stitch starts off as something that is meant to be a weapon and meant to cause destruction, and ends up being this exceedingly amazing force for good, to the point where he is even, commended by the Galactic Federation that had, like, banished him to Earth at the beginning of the first, that had banished him to the Earth at the end of the first movie and everything, and how they just, like, they, welcome him in and that type of thing and give him, like, this command position and all of that, whereas Linlin starts off as something that wants to do good and ends up, turning herself into a weapon in the way that she acts and weaponizing her own children in that regard. Yes, Stitch and his cousins still know how to fight and everything like that, but that's generally not what they tend to do. With Linlin, it's just like her children are there to keep her and her territory strong and safe. Not sure what's going on with Totland specifically at the moment in the story, but you get where I'm coming from. And what I wanted to point out, another thing I wanted to point out is, in regards to Linlin still showing the capacity to be good. So, as I said, she built Totland, and she wants to, make it be this place where people can be happy regardless, safe and happy regardless of, like, what their race is. Yes, there's still the Lever life and that type of thing and the hunger pangs, but it generally seems to be a much safer place to be than some other areas of the world where the world government is not involved. Also, well, I was going to say also if the world government showed up at Totland and ended up, like, going and trying to get a whole bunch of the information that was in Totland and capture, like, the rest of the Big Mom pirates that were there, I don't know what they would do in regards to most of the citizens. I think it would depend on, like, which, admirals and vice admirals and, like, rear admirals and stuff like that ended up on the islands. Because if it was, like, the vice admirals that are, like, decent human beings, like, if Smoker ended up on, like, the Totland Islands and, like, are there, like, capturing the rest of the Big Mom pirates, he's not going to do anything to the civilians that are there. They were living there for their own safety in regards to the fact that they weren't, accepted out in the rest of the world. Whereas if it was Aramaki that would show up there, I'm pretty sure he would just be like, oh, screw all of you. You all supported this. You all supported Big Mom, so I'm just going to arrest all of you, or whatever the case may be, or I don't care what happens to you. Observation. But when Linlin lands on Wano, and when she, gets her amnesia and everything, and they call her Olin, and, we see how she interacts with the people that are in the village, in the Leftovers town, where she is, where Chopper and the other, Chopper and Tama and Momonosuke and Kikunojo bring her there, and she is just kind of, like, welcomed in by the townsfolk. Yes, she's given a little bit of, the Oshiruko or whatever other food they have. And, they help give her, like, a nice hairdo and everything. And she's just, like, very nice and talks very happily and friendly with Osuru and the others that are in the village. And part of her motivation for going to the Udon prison, yeah, Tama and Chopper and the others are going to use her as a way to, like, try to get Luffy out of the prison, which is a pretty good idea in that regard. Yeah, I would say. I don't remember who specifically came up with that idea, but that was a very good idea. And they're going to use her to get Luffy out and giving her the motivation of, oh, there's food there. There's, Oshiruko there, and it's really good. Thankfully, it does end up seeing that Big Mom actually really likes Oshiruko, so that's good. Or ends up liking it a whole lot. But we see that when she gets there and she finds out that the Oshiruko is actually empty, she's actually very sad because she wanted to share it with Osuru and the others that were in the village because of how kind they were to her. And this is a Big Mom that has no memory of anything else. She's washed up on this beach. She's found by this, these three what look like small children. One of them can turn into a dragon, and a girl in a kimono, and she doesn't know where she is. And then they're taken there, and she's like given food and given kindness by these people. And she wants to return the kindness and the fact that, yeah, she wanted to eat a lot of the Oshiruko probably for herself, but she also, Osuru told the Big Mom that, they didn't really have any other food or not a whole lot of food in the village, so it's like they spared what they could to give her something to eat, but she wanted to then take the Oshiruko back to the village and share it with them. And, she gets very sad when she finds out that it's all gone. Point taken away from Luffy in that regard. Luffy, if you hadn't eaten all the Oshiruko, you may have been able to keep Big Mom as an ally, at least for a short amount of time, until she had her head bashed in by a falling Brontosaurus, Brachiosaurus, whatever, falling long-necked dinosaur landed on her head and snapped her out of it. And then, and then later we get the echoes of that when she ends up, back at, on Onigashima, when she ends up finding, Nami and finds Tama there again. She's instantly like, oh, Tama, there you are. I'm so happy you're safe. Oh, I'm so happy you're okay. And, she's, she doesn't like Nami and Usopp there, obviously, but she's very, happy to see Tama. And Prometheus is off to the side and he's like, oh no, she's gone into mother mode again. Whenever there's a child that's under the age of 8, she goes into this mode. And we kind of saw her go a little bit into that when we saw her around her very young children, like Anana and some of the other ones at Totland. In the nursery, we kind of saw the way that she acted with them. She's acting very similarly with Tama in this regard. And what ends up happening is, of course, then Tama tells her, because page 1 is there and causing them a lot of problems and everything because he's been chasing them around. Tama tells her, yeah, the village got attacked by Kaido's men and it got burned down. And, we find out later on that Osuru and a good chunk of them are okay, but, still, she's like, it got burned down and everything. And it was Kaido's crew that did it, and he was part of it. I think she just blames page 1. I don't know if page 1 was actually exceedingly involved in this, but she blames page 1. I'm like, hey, if Tama just thought of that on the spot, good on you, girl, good on you. And Linlin just gets angry at this, and she just, hockeys up her fist and uses the Ryuo stuff and just bangs page 1 into the ground. And, we see that, and that is kind of Linlin, kind of that kind of echoes back to I guess that's against the pirate code that that you don't attack those types, you don't do that type of stuff, or at least Linlin has that type of a code that she follows to a degree, hunger pangs notwithstanding. But we see the way that she does with that, and then we see the same thing happen with Ulti when Ulti shows up and starts attacking Tama specifically. Linlin, uses her maser cannon on Ulti because of the fact that she's attacking Tama, regardless of the fact that Nami and Usopp are there, and that by the end it actually ends up kind of helping them in regards to Nami then later on being able to defeat Ulti. But for Linlin, it's she still attacks Ulti and page 1 for the fact that they were attacking Tama and the fact that they attacked the village and everything like that. And so we see that there are those echoes where Linlin could have been good. And yes, there is the alternate thing where yes, where Stitch could have been bad, where he was just left to his own devices and, had no good outside influence from Lilo or someone, he probably would have ended up turning into the monster that Jumba had, programmed him to be. We see that later on with Leroy when he is who's like the next version down the line of Stitch or whatever, how, you know, he's controlled by Hamsterville. And how he's just, you know, evil incarnate to a degree, or at least as evil incarnate as you get in that world, in regards to Lilo and Stitch. So we see these things where it's just like, we see echoes of like how Linlin could have been. And we see echoes in regards to, you know, Leroy and how bad Stitch could have been, how good Linlin could have been and how bad Stitch could have been. And we see, you know, I noticed those similarities. And so I meant to mention this earlier, but the moment that made me think of this comparison is in Big Mom's flashback, when we get to the episodes where we're seeing her, you know, where, you know, she's trying to figure out where Mother Carmel and the other children went. And we just see this image of just like her at sunset on the island, all on her own. She doesn't know that Streusen and such are there. And she's just there on her own. And she's just like trying to find where they are. And I'm sitting there and I looked at the picture and I just hear in my head, I'm lost. Which brings me back to Lilo and Stitch, because one of the things that starts like connecting with Stitch a little bit is when he sees the storybook about the ugly duckling, and Lilo says, well, you know, that's the ugly duckling. He got separated from his family, and, you know, then he's happy because his family finds him. And like Stitch is very intrigued by that, and then like the next day or whatever, that night, or the next night or whatever, he runs away. And Lilo also says, you know, you can leave if you want. I remember everyone who leaves. Which is actually like an echo back to like Linlin herself, and the fact that, you know, Linlin still remembers Mother Caramel and, you know, the rest of the children from the orphanage and everything like that. And so there's that echo there. But, you know, Stitch goes off into the, you know, the jungle, the woods outside of, you know, the house where Lilo lives. And he's got his book. And he opens the book up to the page that is, you know, the little lost duckling in the forest. And then Stitch, you know, we get like this zoom out thing where he's just like, I'm lost. And, you know, I just, those two things were what connected me to like put me on the path to like, oh my God, there's actually a lot more comparison here than what I thought. Than what one would initially think about these two characters. And I'm like, oh my God. And that like took me down this path to this video now. And just that comparison of just like these two exceedingly strong characters, as young as they are at that point in time, because Stitch is essentially a child in regard to the fact that he's like probably only a couple of months old, if that, in regards to when he was, you know, created and awakened and everything, in regards to his life experience. And it's just like this whole thing of just like, there's so much that we see in regards to those similarities, and the fact that it's just like, that I'm lost is just what clicked in my head there. And so that was what I wanted to point out in this video, those comparisons. The video ended up being longer than I initially thought it would be, but I went off on some tangents. But still, that's par for the course for me. But I noticed those similarities, and I thought they warranted a video. If you agree and you like the video, that's fine. If you don't agree, but you still enjoy the video, that's fine. And if you disagree and you still watch the video, thank you, I guess. But, you know, if you think of any other comparisons that you thought, or like other comparisons of like a Disney character versus a One Piece character or a different anime character that I might know, comment them. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Oh, also, they both hate water, and the fact that, like, Stitch cannot swim because he will sink in water. And, of course, Big Mom has, you know, a devil fruit, and she can't go in the water or else she'll sink. So that was another comparison that I forgot to add in there. But, yeah, that's what we have. So now that's bye.